If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on!
Climb on! Roll! Hi everyone, this is Carrot, welcoming you to another episode of the Dihedral Podcast. Today we're going to be talking to an absolute animal. Drew Francis is many things, including a van lifer, Coloradoan, a firefighter, paramedic, a climber, hiker, and ski, an endurance athlete, and soon-to-be record-holding summiteer. Drew, we know you have a lot going on, and we're grateful for your time. So thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
It should be really fun, especially, I don't know, we don't get a chance to talk to somebody who goes as hard as you do, so I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. So I do want to spend some time talking about your upcoming run at the record books. But before getting into that, I was hoping you could talk to us about the 8x4x48 challenge you recently completed.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So David Goggins has this challenge that he does. He promotes and puts on where he does 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours is the idea.
Okay.
And essentially, I mean, that's it. You run four miles every 4 hours for 2 days straight. And I had done that maybe 2 years ago now with some buddies, and we went from Colorado Springs to California and would run, drive all the way to Long Beach, California. And it was sweet. It was like an awesome adventure, super cool. And I wanted to sort of up the ante and make it more challenging. So the way I see people do that is either you do 4x4x96.
Okay.
So you do 4 days straight, or I did the opposite and I did 8 miles every 4 hours for 2 days.
Unbelievable.
With my sorry about that. With my work schedule, it worked out better where I only have 4 days off at a time. So in order to get to California and then get back, I needed to sort of do that quickly.
That's amazing.
So we did that.
So you ran to California and then ran back, or did you drive back?
So we ran to California and then drove back. And how we did it for the 8x4x48 was started in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Garden of the Gods, which is like a super cool, beautiful run in Colorado. Absolutely, yeah. And then we ran. It was about an hour and 15 minutes what I had allotted for the running portion. And then after that, we would drive another 2:45 to the next location and then get out and run again. And I had to try to plan out the route where I didn't really want to run along like I-40 through New Mexico or like any of these like boring locations.
Yeah.
So I ended up running in like Pagosa Springs, South Fork, Colorado, Mesa Verde National Park, Grand Canyon National Park for sunrise, like some beautiful spots along the way, and not just along the highway. So it was pretty cool.
That's so it's not like you're just running on flat ground either. Like you're talking
it was like I think it ended up being like I think it was 30,000 feet of elevation gain over the run, and then I finished with a half marathon in California on the beach.
Yeah, just casually knock that out. That's so crazy.
It ended up being about 101 miles. I wanted to get an ultra marathon in, so 101
That's
miles.
So cool. So the guy who came up with this challenge, he was a Navy SEAL, is that right? Yeah,
David Goggins is a Navy SEAL, motivational speaker, sort of like all around animal, runs ultra marathons, huge on social media and like motivational speaking and stuff like that. So motivating for me to follow after him and try to replicate his challenge in a way.
That's amazing. So how did you get into just like endurance challenges? Was it through him, or is there a background that runs deeper than that?
So for me, I was an athlete in high school. I played football, basketball, and baseball, but never any sort of long distance running or anything of that sort. But, like training and working towards a goal was always something that I was doing throughout high school and my academic career.
Yeah.
And then post high school, getting into the fire service, it sort of just continued. Physical fitness is a huge part of the fire service, whether that's running or strength training, or really no matter how you look at it, it's just a part of the job. And I think it transitions well into working towards a goal with a team to accomplish something. So for me, growing up in Colorado, it's like this team aspect of working together to achieve a common goal, but then also like this super difficult idea that I had never done before, and putting that into long distance running has been I mean, it's been amazing. And I think that's mainly the reasons I got into it was because of the team aspect and like the challenge aspect of it. I'd never done it before. So it's definitely a challenge for me.
That's amazing. So is it one of those things where you go a certain distance and now you're past what you ever thought possible or beyond your limitations? You're like, why not keep going? Was there like a Forrest Gump moment?
For me, yeah, right. I think for me, a lot of it was like over the past 2 years, I've really gotten into ultramarathon running and just running in general. And I don't think in the last 2 years I've became this like amazing runner. Like I've definitely gotten better, but there are still hundreds of thousands of athletes that are better than me.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the sport is I think the deeper you dive into something, the more you find a community of people that are like-minded. And then the more you think like, wow, there's a lot of really good runners out there. But I think for me, the thing that has sort of switched is the mindset of, when you first start running, like a 10-mile run seems like a lot. And it was a lot. Like for me, starting out, 10 miles seemed like I would never achieve that. And then you do 10 miles and now it doesn't seem so bad. And now you do 15 and now it doesn't seem so bad. And now you do 20 and now it doesn't seem so bad. And it's sort of like this slippery slope where I'm not that much better of a runner than I was 2 years ago, but the mentality of running 100 miles is completely different because I've done it before and I can replicate it now again and again and again.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really like the words that you literally in some cases it's a slippery slope. You're like, oh,
yeah,
let's go. So
yeah.
Yeah, so I know the listeners can't actually see Drew right now, but let me just describe what he is. I mean, he's just a physical specimen. Right now, at this moment, he's hanging from a hangboard, doing curls and leg lifts at the same time. He's just absolutely shredded, shirt off. It's insane. No, I'm just joking. He's just sitting on a chair. But you must work really, really hard to maintain these strengths and these gains that you've gotten throughout the years. Can you just break it down? Like, what does a day in the life of Drew Francis look like from like waking up to going to bed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it sort of depends if I'm at work or if I'm on my off days. Luckily, working as a firefighter, my schedule is pretty great where we work 2 days on and 4 days off. So I have a lot of time off where I can go do whatever I like to do. And on my off days, I still get up pretty early, and every morning pretty much starts off with a training session, no matter where I'm waking up at. Being out of the van nowadays, it makes it a little easier to access some remote trailheads or some mountains or some peaks nearby. So I think my average morning would wake up and probably run across or up or over or climb something that's nearby, probably for several miles and several hours. Come back to the van, eat my morning breakfast. I eat a lot of food right now to cover for all these mileage. And then I'll move the van and go somewhere else and then get an afternoon training session in as well. So it's been a lot of 2-a-days lately, a lot of scouting and like reconnaissance, even if that's just driving in the van. And over the especially like last 6 months, it's been really heavy into trail specific, like 14er goal oriented things. And I think a lot of that is just the nature of the beast where it's like, I have this goal in mind and my days sort of revolve around that because of that, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. That's actually a really perfect segue into talking about what this record is and what you're about to put yourself through. So can you just explain that to all of us? Because it's amazing, really.
So the state of Colorado has 54 or 58, sort of depending how you look at it, but 58 peaks that are over 14,000 feet of elevation. So 14,000 feet above sea level. And then as with everything in the endurance world and hiking world, there's always a fastest time to do all of them, I feel like. And the fastest time to hike all of the 14ers in Colorado is 9 days and 21 hours. So that was set in 2015. And then prior to that, it was over 10 days in 1999. So throughout the years, there's been multiple record attempts in between those two successful ones. So it's people in Colorado go for it almost every year. You probably hear about someone that's thinking about attempting it or actually is attempting it. And then those are the only two that have stuck, for multiple reasons, weather and injuries and the logistics of it and all those sorts of things. So my goal is to do sub 9 days or 216 hours to climb all 58 of the 14ers in Colorado.
So let's break down a few, like some intermediate spot as you're going through this. So you wake up and you just start going up and then you come down, but you don't stop. Like that's not the end of the day. You got to do all of these in sub 9 days. And so is it just constant up, drive to the next destination, or do you have to like walk or fly? Like, how do you get from one peak to the next?
So there are some rules associated with the record attempt. One of them being you can't use any sort of aerial transport support.
Okay.
Because I guess if you had someone that had unlimited money, you could just get helicopter to each trailhead.
Yeah.
That is not me, but I guess someone could do that.
You're not paying firefighters that salary yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The other rules are you have to do 3,000 feet of elevation gain, ascent and descent per mountain.
Okay.
Another rule is you can't have any route finders or like pack mules. So you have to do all your own route finding, you have to be pretty much unsupported above 3,000 feet below the mountain peak.
Yeah.
So if the mountain's at 14,000 feet exactly, as soon as you hit 11,000 feet or pretty much tree line, you have to be unsupported from that point forward. Okay. And the record attempt starts the second I am, I guess, 29.99 below the first peak.
Okay.
And then it ends. It's a running clock until I'm that distance below the last peak. So everything in between counts against me, essentially, as far as drive time, recovery time, sleep time, climbing, hiking, trail running. It's a full-on event.
So I'm sure like different peaks have different obstacles, right? So I'm sure some might have tourist parking lots that you can pull up into before you, and then others must have approaches that are nasty, I guess.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I mean, and that's the nature of the beast. It's like, depending even what mountain range you're in Colorado, or even if you break it down peak to peak, they are so variant in access and technicality and distance. So that 3,000 foot rule can actually hurt me on some of them, because some of these trailheads are so popular that they actually sit at like 12,500 feet.
Right.
So if I was to do it from the normal trailhead, I'd be breaking the 3,000 foot rule, but gaining time, obviously.
Yeah.
So on peaks like that, I'll have to hike up the road for a couple miles to make sure I get that elevation gain.
Oh, right.
So that's a bummer.
Yeah, right.
But on the flip side of that, it's also cool logistically, because there are some peaks where you're able to access a better trailhead via like dirt bike or mountain bike or vehicle or stuff like that. So I think the 3,000 foot rule sort of averages out, as long as you are able to find those locations where it can benefit you.
Yeah.
Because the ones where it hurts you are really obvious, because you know that the trailhead sits above that point. But the ones where it can benefit you are sort of harder to find. And I think that with this record attempt, it's physically demanding, but then also I think the logistics of it are equal, if not more difficult than the actual physical portion itself, just because trying to figure out a way to combine all 58 peaks in 9 consecutive days, it's crazy. No. I mean, it's even trying to do it now, it's crazy, hard.
Yeah. So are you going to follow what the original kind of terrain was, or avenue towards finishing was, or are you working something out completely different?
Yeah, so I have the previous gentleman, his name is Andrew Hamilton. I have his times and routes broken down to the second. So I know exactly what he was at, because he had a satellite tracker with him through the attempt. So I was able to gather all that data and put it into a timesheet, and then know which trailheads he used, what time he got there at, and how long each peak took him. So that has been helpful for one. And then I had to take that data and then think about how can I make this faster now. Yeah. So I'm using some of his similar routes, because some of them are, there's really no way you could do it faster that I know of, other than just moving quicker. Right. But then some of it, I'm also I'm banking on the fact that I put in more mileage training to allow me to do some of the harder peaks later in the attempt, and therefore save drive time. So there's a portion in the attempt where he went out and came back and hit some peaks, like sort of a little bit out of order. And I don't know if that was for weather or for just physical tiredness. But I'm pretty much banking on the fact that I've logged enough thousands of miles of training that I'll be able to do those peaks later, and then therefore hopefully save time. So sort of a similar route, but also definitely some variance in there to hopefully try to save time and do it faster.
So let's talk about sleep and eating. When do you sleep on something like this? When you can, or when you have to? How does that work?
Yeah. So the record attempt will go for 216 hours, and 30 hours of that will be drive time, guaranteed. The way I have it calculated out, there's really no way around that, and that's about the fastest you can get to those peaks. So in that 30 hours, that will be most of my recovery and drive time.
Okay.
Or recovery and sleep time, sorry. And if you break it down, that comes out to about 85% on the trail and 15% recovering and sleeping.
Okay.
So over the course of 9 days, 15% of that is about 30 hours. So that's the primary recovery time, is that 15%.
Yeah.
And Andrew Hamilton, he did 75-25 if you break it down. So you did those same drive routes, but then also would rest at the trailheads at some points, which is an option. But in order to make it faster, I think an area where I'm hoping that I can save time is the sleep and recovery portion.
Yeah.
I am younger than him when he did it. And then I think being a firefighter and working a shift schedule hurts me in a lot of ways, training, but also helps me in the sense that, like, we get up at 3 a.m. all the time, and do crazy stuff. And it's really just part of the job. So I think it's sort of just become, over the last 2 years, like normal to operate on only a little bit of sleep, which isn't healthy,
Right.
but it's just the nature of the beast of working shift work. So I think that'll actually help me with the record attempt, being able to like fall back on that and know that I can function at a decently high level with a little amount of sleep.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of mind bending to even just consider like, I have a tough time staying up, you know what I mean? Let alone for that much. It's so impressive. But you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. Like, I mean, in terms of working your careers, things don't happen without a community, right? So do you have a support team with you? Do you have like people who are going to be driving, sponsors? Like, what do you have going on in terms of those things?
Absolutely. So I am 100% unsponsored. This has all been on my own.
Yeah.
However, not unsponsored in the sense that I don't have a support group.
Yeah.
So I definitely have a support crew. My family, for one, has been really supportive. They're big into outdoors. My mom was a triathlete, so she understands like the training portion of it. And they're going to be driving vehicles, and they understand the logistical plan. We've had family meetings like in the living room where I literally just screen share my Mac to the TV, and then they just sit and take notes, and I just tell them what is supposed to happen and when.
That is so awesome.
So it's been amazing in that sense. And then all the guys I went through fire academy with, there was 30 guys in my academy, and I'm pretty close with about 10 of them, like super, super close.
Yeah.
And there's not really, other than my family, there's not really anyone that you could become that close with other than going through the fire academy or like a special forces selection or something like that. And those guys are all going to help drive. They're going to help medically. They're going to help cook. Because the benefit of knowing a bunch of also paramedics is that they can all do some sort of medical training for me.
Oh, that's so great.
There'll be a paramedic on staff just because they're my friends the whole time, whether that's for me or whether that's for the support crew, because we're going to be in the middle of nowhere pretty much for 9 days. So having someone that's medically trained there will be good.
No, that's awesome.
But yeah.
So you say you don't have a sponsor. What shoes are you wearing? Like, I feel like if somebody's gonna hear this, they'll be like, "Oh, come on, you're wearing our shoes."
I know. I know. I wear a lot of different shoes, but lately I've been liking Saucony. Their trail running series has been really good. The hard part with 14ers is like the approach is a lot of times like pretty chill, like normal dirt trail, like a normal pair of running shoes can handle it. But then the last 2 to 3 miles of almost all of them is like scree field, climbing, more climbing, and not like no technical climbing, like roped in, but it's like it eats up a pair of running shoes. So it's hard. Like, do I need to wear these like technical hiking boots, or do I need to wear trail runners and just go through 15 of them? You know what I mean? Right. And I've sort of gone to the second option because they're lighter. I move quicker in them. I feel like I can get a better feel of the rock in those type of shoes versus like wearing a big clunky boot for 9 days. I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't like that as much.
And on the way, you got to make sure that your friends and family get some photos, like close up of the shoes. They need to pay you back.
Yeah.
Reimburse them. You're going to get this record. And then, I don't know, hopefully everybody's clamoring just for a piece of you. That would be ideal. So
there's a running store in Parker, and I think I've been their number one customer this year. And probably last.
Come on, Parker, step up your game.
Yeah.
So I have some friends and associates who do ultra marathons, and running ultra marathons is a lot like rock climbing in the sense that you're not really competing against the other people. You're kind of competing against yourself. And so people want you to do good and people want to support you. Have you heard from other people who have taken a stab at this record, and are they supportive of what you're doing?
Yeah, so I've reached out to the guy that currently has the record. We met in person a few times and have met over social media, and he's been really supportive. Like, I will go to him with questions logistically.
That's cool.
And he gives me what I think are like straight up good answers and really wants to be supportive.
I hope so. Trying to sabotage you, right?
Yeah, I don't think he's any sort of sabotage or anything like that. And his wife or girlfriend or significant other, I'm not sure if they're married or not, but significant other, she's also super supportive and will message me back and help me out because she has done plenty of 14er stuff as well. And then as far as other people attempting the record attempt, there's actually another guy this year that may be going for it. I just heard.
Okay.
So, and I've reached out to him once or twice on Instagram. He's been super nice. I never met him in person. But yeah, I mean, the whole community is like you said, I don't think that there's a lot of like, it's different for me coming from like a team sport aspect.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Like a football game where like you've never even met the guy and you just hate them. You just want to crush them. And it's like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around like, okay, well, we can't act like that. Like, you have to be nice to everybody.
Right, that's so funny.
It's nice coming into it because I'm like a pretty amateur into the ultra endurance like world. So having open arms and being welcomed is very nice.
Yeah.
But it's definitely different for me coming from more of like the savage team sport mindset.
Right. It's like us against them, right? Now it's just like
exactly,
us against the record or something like
exactly that. Yeah. So and that's hard. Like for me, I view it now, it's like me against the clock versus me against some like another human being, if that makes sense. So
sure.
And I think that's good mentally because then it's like I can only push as hard as I'm going to push myself.
Right.
And like I'll keep going. That's like, so I think that for me is motivating because it's like I'm the only one holding me back.
That's awesome.
And I think that's really good for mentally. That's helpful for me.
So you've looked at everything. Is there one peak that you're like, this one's serious, like this one is more technical, it's more dangerous? Is there something that stands out?
Yeah.
Strikes a chord there.
There's a few sections of the attempt where like if you were going to go out and do these peaks for leisure, you would go out in a weekend and hit like these two peaks, you'd go home. The next week you'd come out and hit these two peaks and go home. And then the next weekend you do the last two. And for the record attempt, instead of like doing 3 different trailheads at 3 different times, it's like an 18-hour ordeal where I'm hitting all 6 of these peaks in one go, completely unsupported, like a lot of times in the middle of the night. And I've just hit, 25 before that, and I have 25 after it.
Yeah.
So there's 3 sections like that in the record attempt where I will pretty much be completely unsupported, going overnight into the next day, climbing across fairly technical terrain with some like class 5 plus moves, where you're fairly exposed. You have the option to rope in a lot of these. I won't because it takes time. And I don't have a ton of climbing, technically climbing experience. I've done some like belay stuff and I've done stuff with work for rope rescues and that sort of stuff. But as far as like ultra light technical climbing, I'm definitely not the guy for that. So I think for me, it'd be faster for me I feel confident in my like bouldering abilities, I guess, and being able to do like those low class 5 moves and then continue on like a class 4 traverse across it. The hard part is like a lot of that will be in the middle of the night on no sleep, like potentially in pouring rain. So there's a lot of other factors other than just the mountain itself that go into that. And there's 3 sections like that'll be 20 plus hours completely unsupported, where there's a lot of technical climbing involved. So
those
are definitely
they keep you up at night, or not that much?
At the fire department?
No, like when you're going to bed and you start thinking about this mountain, are those like stressing you from?
Oh, I see. I mean, yeah, there's definitely the elks in Colorado are pretty technical. I think a lot of people know the Maroon Bells. It's like the poster card of Colorado. Like if you from the visitor center, of course, not from the top.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But like if you see a picture of Colorado, that's probably somewhere in the magazine is the Maroon Bells in the fall, probably. And in that range, you have the Maroon Bells, you have Pyramid, and you have Capital and Snowmass. which, like I said, most of the time you'd go out and do pyramid and come back, do maroon north and south and come back. And then you go to a completely different trailhead on the other side of that range and then do capital from that. And instead of doing that, it's all going to be in one fail swoop across the entire elk range, starting at 5 p.m., working till the next day at 3 in the afternoon. So that section right there will make or break the record attempt. Right, absolutely. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, what's that?
No, I was going to say, are you going to be like live streaming at certain portions along the way so that like people can watch it, or not really? You'll just let us know afterwards.
I may try to like do like some Instagram stuff, and honestly, like to keep me awake, that'd be kind of nice.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
the hard part is like, especially in that section, there's no cell service for that whole time. I mean, you are in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I've been in that area a lot, and I'm familiar with the routes and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, there's not a lot of things that are similar to being on top of a mountain at 2 a.m. and there's not a single person for miles and miles. And you know that in your head that there's no one else around. It's definitely, if you let it get to you, it will get to you hard. So that's definitely, I think, a mentally challenging portion of that is being able to push past that. And then it's just the most important mile is the mile that you're on right now. And then you just get to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and eventually the sun will rise.
That's awesome. So you've been training, you've been prepping, and you've been working, doing all these other things, but very recently you also bought a van and built it out in a month. And I was hoping we could talk about that process a little bit. And I guess my first question is, are you living in it like full time? Is that your permanent residence at the moment?
Yep, I live in it full time. I'm actually at a buddy's house right now because it's getting an oil change, so I'm not in it right now.
Perfect. That worked out great.
Yeah, it worked out well. Yeah, but I'm living it full time outside of today, pretty much, I guess. And I bought it back in February, and then like late February bought it, and then in the month of March I drove it down to Arizona where my grandpa lives, and he did cabinetry for his whole career, pretty much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I ordered everything online, shipped it to his house before I went down there, drove it down. I had a 10-day from work, so I had a shift off from work, so we have 10 days off, and then I stayed up like all night working on this thing. My grandpa is like mid-70s and an absolute animal working. I felt like, Grandpa, you need to take a break. Like he was so supportive of wanting to help me out and help me beat the record. And I mean, I don't know. It's impressive. Impressive the amount of time he put into it. But it was long days. I would get up in the morning, go train. There's some mountains near their house, so I'd go run some trails at like 3 or 4 in the morning, come back, work on the van all day. I usually go to bed around 11 or 12, get a few hours of sleep, and then just repeat the next day. And then I ended up using some sick time from work and stayed down there for 2 weeks. And then we got the van built out pretty much completely in 2 full weeks down there. So it was some of the busiest 2 weeks of my entire life.
That's crazy. And it looks so good. Like you can tell somebody involved like knew exactly what they were doing. I don't know if it was the research you did or the mastery of your grandpa, but holy moly, that looks so good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Before I actually did that, I had never even wired 120 volt outlet before I had even started building this van. So it was definitely a learning curve going from that to essentially building a tiny home in 2 weeks. And he was super helpful, my grandpa, with all the woodworking. I learned a ton from him, all about like cabinetry and stuff like that. And then it was just a lot of YouTube about electrical, and solar and plumbing and all that sort of stuff, because he was definitely the specialty man as far as woodworking. But outside of that, I did a lot of the electrical and stuff like that. One of the funniest moments I have from building out the van is I have an inverter in there, and you have to program the inverter to like accept the sort of batteries that you have, but you can only use a Windows computer, and I have a Mac computer. Luckily, my grandma has a Windows computer. Awesome. She operates on like Windows 5 and I think Windows 15 now. So it's like middle of the night, Phoenix, Arizona. I'm in the driveway programming like a $2,000 piece of electrical equipment with a Windows 5 computer.
That's so great.
Like, just hating my
I
life.
get to see your grandma wanting to be so helpful too. Like,
Yes.
look at my computer.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, it worked, but man, it was slow.
Man,
Painfully slow.
so you've been what, 3-4 months that you've been living in it full time since?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. 3 or 4 months now, and I've been in it full time. My parents live in Colorado, so I'm able to use their house as like a home base if I need anything to like restock or whatnot. All my friends live around here, so I got friends that live up in the mountains, which I'll like even if they have like a street I can just crash on. Super nice. A shower if I need one. The van has a shower, so I use that sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of resources around, so it's not like I'm totally unsupported in the van. But it's nice in the fact that I can go up to a trailhead and sleep at 11,000 feet, even just for the acclimation portion of like sleeping at 11,000 feet for, like last week I was up there for 10 days straight, sleeping at 11,000 feet. So I mean, that is something that you just can't replicate unless you are either camping all the time or have a vehicle that you can sleep in all the time.
That's amazing. So after 4 months of living in the van on a full-time basis, is there one thing that you're like, man, this is it, I wish we would have done this from the beginning, or is everything pretty smooth?
I mean, there's a lot of like van life stuff that you kind of learn. And I had a Toyota Tundra I had converted out before this, that I sort of like part-time lived in last year, training for this record attempt still. And that was harder just because of the fact that like it's a truck, so you can't stand up in it. Like there was no heat in the sleeping area, so it's totally different. This has a lot more comforts of home. But even still, I have a toilet in the van, but it's a dry flush toilet, so it costs like $1, I guess, every time you go to the bathroom. So I don't pee in it because I don't want to waste the money.
You want to pay $1 just to pee?
Exactly. So like this is gonna sound like probably TMI, but like one of the van life quirks is like a Powerade bottle in the middle of the night is your best friend.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because I'm like in a neighborhood and I have a bathroom anywhere nearby, and like something that you don't think of is like, you get up in the middle of the night to pee, where are you gonna go?
You want to be in some old lady's house or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's been one thing. And then it's always just like, where am I gonna sleep tonight? It's always like
for sure
in your mind, where it's like, is this safe? Is someone gonna call the cops? Like, what's going to happen. And the only time I've had the cops called on me so far, I was out climbing all night and then all day, and then got back to Leadville, Colorado at around 8 p.m. I think it was. So I was out for like almost 24 hours doing a bunch of peaks in the area. This was like 2 weeks ago. And I got back, found this like dirt parking lot, and just crashed, went straight to sleep.
Yeah.
I woke up at maybe 11 p.m. to the Lake County Sheriff's Office knocking on my door. And
God.
I'm like in my shorts, no shirt, like my hair's a mess. I probably smell like fly for 24 hours. So I was like, hey, are you guys like, do you need me to move? Sorry about that. And what happened was my parents, so my Garmin InReach had died while I was on the mountain.
Okay.
So my parents, I had fallen on the mountain and like died.
Oh my God.
And they were so worried about me. So they had called like the non-emergency, and my parents, like, they hate, like, I tell them all the time, like, do not call 911, like, just call me. Like, because we go to so much stuff that is not 911 worthy.
Right.
So they were like, well, we called the non-emergent line, like, we didn't want to waste their time, but we're really worried about you, because I hadn't talked to them in like 12 hours.
Oh my God.
And satellite phones on the side of a mountain, which I guess I understand. So then the sheriff ended up being super cool, and he was like, oh, can I see the van? Just like, how's the record attempt going? Like, you seem like a really
cool guy.
He's like, do you need to crash at my house? You can use my.
That's so awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I went from like, I felt bad for wasting his time, but yeah, he was such a nice guy. That's the only time I've had the cops called on me, knock on wood.
Right, exactly. I got wood right here for you. So
yeah,
let me see if I can get a piece of advice from you. Let's say somebody just bought an empty cargo van. What's one piece of advice you would give them as they go into the build?
It's definitely, I don't know. It depends on how you want to build it out, but I think for me, it was more expensive than I thought. For one, I think the expense is higher just because of the fact, especially even if you're doing everything yourself, just buying quality equipment is expensive.
Okay.
And the hard part was like, I wanted to buy stuff that worked well at elevation and worked well in the cold.
Right.
So a lot of these, like, you could probably buy a cheaper version, but then all the reviews are saying like, oh, they don't work at 10,000 feet or stuff like that. So that was a hard part for me, was like a little bit of buyer's shock, where I was like, oh God, this is really expensive. So that's one thing. And then two, find someone that has done it before and talk to them. Because my cousin builds out school buses for a living.
Oh, cool.
So I was able to call him and use him as a resource every day, as much as I needed. And that was overly helpful, because like sorting through forums and YouTube videos is helpful. But when you just need like, what size bolt do I need, or like some little electrical thing, it's overwhelming to search through all that information. So having someone a phone call away is really helpful.
No, that's perfect. So I want to get your advice on something else, just kind of as we move to closing up a little bit. Let's imagine that somebody from out of state is coming to Colorado, and for whatever reason you're going to be their guide for a day, and they want to go on a hike, they want to go skiing, they want to go climbing, and they want the best pizza in Colorado. So where would you take this person for a hike? It could be any hike, skiing somewhere, climbing, and the best pizza in Colorado.
Okay, so I would probably bring in one of my buddies whose name is Andrew. He does base jumping and climbing. He would handle the climbing aspect of this, because I would do a good enough job. Probably, he lives in Boulder. He'd probably take you somewhere in Boulder or Boulder Canyon. And there's beautiful spots. He cliff jumps, or he does base jumping every day.
What's
so
his name?
Andrew Moore.
All right, Andrew Moore. That's awesome.
But as far as hiking, we'd probably start off the morning. I think Rocky Mountain National Park is right there outside of Boulder. That would be a great introduction to Colorado. You've never been here before. You have Long's Peak as your backdrop, which is like one of the 14ers. It's beautiful. You got good elevation. Probably see some elk. There's a lot of tourists, but if we go at the right time of day or the right season, you'll miss a lot of them. So you got to get it in. And then you can head down the canyon, and a little bit of a drive, but Idaho Springs has Bojo's Pizza, which is like super well known in Idaho Springs. If you're coming down from ski traffic, everyone goes there. So Rocky Mountain National Park, I'll drop you off with Andrew for a few hours. He'll take you climbing in Boulder, and then I'll pick you back up and take you to Boulder, or take you to Idaho Springs for pizza.
All right. What's it called? Bojo's?
It's called Bojo's. Yeah.
All right.
I think that's the name of it. I hope I'm getting that right. I've been there like
right. That's fine. It's close enough. And then one more thing. The Denver Nuggets are in the NBA Finals. Like, you're a sports fan. What's it like out there? Are they going to beat Miami?
I mean, so with all this training, I've probably not been a very good sports fan lately.
All right.
But I think they're going to win. I think they got a good shot. They've been looking really good in the few games I've seen.
All right.
So I think they got a good shot. It's been a good couple of years for us though, with the Avs and then the Nuggets. It's been fun in Denver.
No, for sure. So then, but before we get going, I just want to see if there's anything else you want to touch on, or anybody that you want to sort of, from your crew or your team, that you want to spotlight, or anything like that.
No, I mean, really just like my parents have been super supportive. So none of them are like looking for sponsorships. No one's looking for money. Like, I'm not looking for sponsorships. None of this is about money. It was all about like this goal that I wanted to do. And, in honor of my mom going through cancer, working through me as a firefighter, like, to what can I do to motivate people to get outside? And I think that this project is a result of that. And when you have something, like we always say, like, when the why is strong, the how is easy. And for us, like, the why is super strong. So the how is always going to be, it's going to be easy. And I think when you have that, then the lack of sponsorship, or like there's no monetary gain involved, and no one's looking for that. Like, and I think that those people that are like that and are just doing it for the sport of it will always be more self-motivated than people that are getting paid to do it.
Awesome.
And I think that's a huge part of it. Not to say those guys that are paid to do it aren't animals. Obviously, Alex Honnold is ridiculous. But I think that there's something to be said about no monetary gain involved.
People who are just grinding to grind. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. So I think that's something that I'd probably leave everyone with, is just, if you're passionate about something, just go out there and do it.
That's perfect. So one final thing, like, what can we do to follow along? Where are we getting updates from?
Thank you. I post all my stuff on Instagram. It's just drewfrancis.fit. It's like my fitness Instagram account. All my climbing's on there, all my training. And then my website is the same thing, just drewfrancisfit.com. And all my 8x4x48s on there, my upcoming 14er challenge. And then I've done a bunch of other like smaller endurance things, and those are all on there as well. So if you ever wanted to follow along or look at what I'm doing, and that's where you can find me.
Drew, thank you so much for talking to us. It was an absolute blast. I learned a lot, and I'm pulling for it. If there's anything else we can do, let us know, and then we'll have to talk again afterwards to see how it went.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, Drew. All the best.